folks, and welcome to Subjective Thoughts. And our book for today is The Body Snatchers by Jack Finney. Now, there is some fighting, weird shit, and aliens in this one, so if you are in any way squeamish, you have been warned. Also, spoilers. Alright, and this was published by. There we go. That's over there. I never know how to pronounce this, but that's the big name there. Okay, so this is my first Jack Finney book. Yeah, he has some other ones that I think I have on my want to read on Goodreads. And I think I don't know how well known the Body Snatcher story is. I know there's been two movies. I remember the one because I saw that scene a few times where the man points and then lets out the scream and the woman starts freaking out. If I can find it, I'll put it here. But that's the one I saw. I think that was the newer movie. Not because there was a one before that. But it seems that they've done something different. I think just based on that screaming. But anyway, I got this book. I finally read it, and it took me a while. I don't know. I started it in 2022. And then I, for some reason, dropped it, even though I found it interesting. But anyway, finally I finished reading it. So, the story goes like this. You got a doctor. His name is Miles. I'm not sure how to pronounce his surname. But he's a doctor in this Santa Mira town. Not Marie, I think Santa Mira. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But yes, he's a doctor there, life as usual. The story starts with him actually saying, you might not believe anything that I'm about to tell you. And if you're looking for, a story with hard proof and hard proof, then you might as well stop reading now. So anyway, I think because a portion of this book I read so long ago, but okay, so he writes that, then the story starts, describing a bit about Miles' his life. He's recently divorced, and he works as a doctor, and his father, before him, was also a doctor. So he goes to work as usual, and one woman, I think it was more than a few people call him and say, my dad, my uncle, my sister, my mom, they're just not the same. And something is weird. It's not them. It's not the person I knew. This it looks exactly the same, acts the same, but it's not. So then, someone he dated in high school. Her name is Becky Dressel. I'm just gonna call her Becky. Anyway, Becky arrives to see him. She's also herself divorced now. And she's asking him to come with her because her cousin, I think, yeah, it was her cousin, she's concerned. She says that her father, or Becky's uncle, Ira, is not, it's not him. Or she's concerned about something. So Miles goes with her to see the uncle, just for a visit. And she said, you see, acts exactly the same, but it's just not him. I just know it's not him. She can't explain, how, but it's not her uncle. It's not her father. Well, anyway, the visit ends. Miles thinks that maybe she's just very nervous. Of course, that is, ridiculous to say that it's not him when it looks and sounds exactly like him. That happens. I think after that, a few more people call him, and then, one night, or not one night, and then he gets a call. He has a friend who's a writer. His name is Jack, right? I said, yeah, Jack and his wife, Theodora. Jack, I think Jack called him, then he went to his house. It was at night, because Jack has found the body in his basement. And he couldn't believe it, and he called Miles to come over and see. And the body was, very weird. It looks like it was just forming. And it was also, one detail was missing fingerprints. The hands were smooth as a baby's bottom, or the fingertips, I should say. So, things are weird or what's going on. And then because it's starting to form like a man, it's starting to to look like it was supposed to be Jack, then, it starts to make connections with what people have been saying. And I think after that, Miles goes to Becky's house to check on her with all of this. And he breaks in, and he goes to the basement, and there he sees also a body forming that's supposed to be Becky. And he goes quickly up to her room, until he finds her room, picks her up, and carries her back to his house. So in his house, there's Theodora and Jack are already there. Then they call, Miles calls a friend named Manny. Manny is also, he's a psychologist or a doctor of psychology. Anyway, they call him. He comes over there to them to talk, and then he starts telling them, all this is just a delusion. And he tells them about these other towns that had something similar. And that's all it is, and they'll see it'll all go away. So Manny goes back home. Jack and Theodora stay the night at Miles's house, so does Becky. So, okay, that's how things are. He convinces them in the morning, yeah, this all seems a bit silly. But then he asks them all to, stay with him for a little while. At least for a few days. They all agree. Miles goes to work as usual, and then suddenly he gets calls, and one patient visits, and she says, "Oh, I'm sorry about what I said, doctor. And, the girls don't know why they said that about their teacher. It was their teacher." Or he gets calls and say, "Oh, I'm sorry I bothered you, silly me," and all that. So he's like, okay. And then he returns back to his home, where everyone's waiting. They have dinner. But then, this doesn't leave his mind, and he sits with Jack and he says, wait, all of this could be explained, really, except the fingerprints. The body didn't have fingerprints. Oh, they talk about that the night before. And then while he's in his office, Miles thinks maybe Manny's one of them too, whatever those things are. Because Jack also shows them he's a writer, and he collects all these newspaper clippings of stories. And there were stories about big pods that were found, big seed pods. And, what's going on with those? He's saying, yeah, a lot of it's not... and other stories that, yeah, they might not be real, but some of them are probably real. Trying to tell them when he talks to them about it that this could probably be very real as well. So then they takes he and Jack, Theodora and Jack. She said, well, let's go to bed, dear. Miles is alone with Becky. There's something going on between those two. As I said, they dated in high school, and they start kissing. But then Jack calls him. Tells him to go down with him to the basement of his house, where there are 4 pods. Just like the pods described in the newspaper, where bodies are forming. Bodies that are supposed to replace the 4 of them. So he and Jack take shifts. Things are getting more tense. They're freaking out, and they just end up in the morning just driving off all 4 of them together. And they go, they just go out of town. And go to, they go out of town, they find a motel, they stayed the night there, they finally get some sleep, what are we gonna do? And in the morning, Jack is out smoking, Miles goes out to him, You know, he's out. He sleeps, spends the night with Becky, but they don't do any activities. He wants to, but he also sorry, that's Doyle. He wants to do activities with Becky, but he's also afraid to because his first marriage ended in failure, and he's afraid of I guess ruining one with Becky. So he goes outside. He says, "Jack, what are we gonna do?" And Jack is like, "What can't we do, Miles? We have to go back." And Miles realizes, yeah, there's nothing else they can really do. So they return. They all return back, and as they're driving, Jack complains about the road, and he said, months ago they were supposed to. There's supposed to be like a big highway road built, so there would be more people coming to town. But then they decided not to do that for some reason, and didn't fix the current one. So the way out of Santa Mira in California, by the way, is very, very difficult. So they get back into town. They go into Miles's house, and they stay there. I don't. Oh no! Wait. Wait. Sorry. That was before that. Before that. Before that, after the pods, Jack's like, Miles, we gotta call someone. Do you know anyone in Washington? Anyone that can help? And Miles does know one lieutenant, and he calls him and tells him the whole story. And of course, who's gonna believe that? Okay, would you believe if someone told you that if you arrived? And the lieutenant tells him, Miles, if you want me to, I'll go say something. I'll tell someone, but by the time it reaches someplace, no one's gonna believe that. And then after that, they leave in panic. And then they go back. And again, you can tell that things are still quite fucked. Jack says, he and Theodore are gonna go back to, and after the motel, they're gonna go back to their house and get some clothes, because they ran out and grabbed whatever they had there. So they go, they drop off Miles and Becky, and Miles and Becky start walking, and now as they go back in, they suddenly notice how empty the streets look, how everything seems dull and empty and dirty, as if no one's really doing anything. Oh, they go, they walk into the pharmacy. Walk into a pharmacy. Miles is there, and they walk in. Becky tells them, "Let's get a coffee or some Coca-Cola." She just wants him to get off the empty street. They go in, and there is a businessman there, or the selling agent. They order Cokes, but the Cokes are stale. No one's even shook them or kept them cold. And the salesman complains to them how it's recently been impossible to sell in their town. That it's almost like the people are, not letting other salesmen or him through, and it's not worth to him to get there, to get into town, I mean. So, the salesman finishes coffee that's not good and leaves. Then Becky and Miles leave as well. They go, not Miles, Becky wants to immediately go check on her father, who was left there. So she goes with Miles, but he said, wait, they take off their shoes, because they see I take a car in front of the house. They approach the house quietly, and he asks Becky, where do you think they'll be? And she said, probably the living room. And then they sit, they crouch under the window quietly on the porch and listen. And at first, Becky's family, her father, I think that cousin and uncle and aunt sound normal. They sound like themselves, and Miles thinks, oh, maybe we made a terrible mistake. But then he experiences a moment, something they experienced years ago when he was in college. There was a guy that would shine shoes, and he sounded, always very happy and everything. But then one night, Miles, was tired, studied a lot, and he just decided to sleep in his car. And he laid there, and next to the car stopped the shoe shine guy and a friend of his. And the way the guy that shined shoes talked, there's so much venom in his voice and so much bitterness that it just, appalled Miles. And after that, he never approached the stand again. And he felt the same thing here because then the family members started to mock him. Where they pretended, oh, yes, Miles, silly me, and all that. And they realized that nope, all of them are no longer themselves. They've been replaced. So Miles and Becky quietly leave. And then, what are we going to do? And he said, oh, wait, let's. As before that, they stop. Before they go to the house, they stop at the library, where Miles sees the librarian that he's known since he was a little boy. She gave him his books, and he asks for a paper, newspapers, to read about that story that Jack mentioned with the pods. So Miles tells her the dates, they sit and wait, she brings it out, but then they notice that all the articles about it have been cut out. And then Miles realizes, and he calls her over, and he said, why did you cut them out? And then he tells her, I know what you are. And at first, she looks so confused, but then she loses all emotion in her face. And that's how he knows that she's not the librarian he's known. Then they leave, then they go to the house. And after that, they're like, oh, where are we going to go? So they go visit that professor that was quoted for the article about the pods. And they go over to talk to him about it. Miles doesn't reveal too much, but he says, Professor, I'm interested. And he tells him, it's just a theory I said because the pods were big and weird. And not people, but the reporter kid, he bamboozled me there and kept trying to get a story, and that's what I gave him one. I said they could be alien, but maybe they're just not the kind I know. And I think, what was it? When does he call? Because before that, at some point before that, I think he calls. When does he call? Because before this, he calls Jack. Where was it from? Maybe they go into his house. Oh shit! What was it? Anyway, before they go to the professor, he calls Jack to tell him, meet us in an hour outside the professor's house. So he and Becky leave, and just as they go out, they hear a car driving by really fast and gunshots, and it's Jack's car, and he and Theodore are being pursued by police. So yeah, they've been discovered and told about. Oh yes, I think after their house, after going to Becky's house, they go to Miles's house, and that's where the police, was a sheriff, waits for them. Miles manages to knock him out and handcuff him to his car, and that's when he calls Jack. Well, anyway, Jack did this on purpose so they would be warned. So then he and Becky start going, and they go to the only place they can, into Jack's office. They sneak in there, and they're just, kind of resting there. Not completely, but just resting and looking outside. And while Becky lies her down, I think, on maybe a sofa he has there, he looks outside as he thinks of what to do. And then the scene starts to unfold. The last passengers from the bus get off, and the next bus is only won't come for another 51 minutes. And then people in town, they start going out. They receive these buttons that you put on from some kind of event in town. And the usual colors are red and blue. No, red and white, I think. And these ones are blue and yellow. And you can see that everyone's in town are wearing them. And there are police there. And they escort away, under false pretenses, people that are not from the town, to get them away from the area. And so everyone in the street have these buttons on, and they're standing there waiting. And then trucks arrive. And from those trucks, And Miles already knew what was in them. It was those pod seeds. And then the drivers, or no, the main guy, the two main guys there, one of them reads from the list, asking people who have family in this area, come forth, and gives them a pods. And so that is it. They're going to keep spreading the pods further. They already have Santa Mira. Now they're going to get more places by doing that. So that they're still in the office, and then Miles already knew this would happen. The door to his office is open, and there are Manny, that professor, another guy Jack knows, and one he doesn't know. And so, okay, so what these aliens are, or the aliens, these alien pods, they come from space. Their planet supposedly is dead, and they're looking for a new planet to inhabit. So those pods stayed there, and when they first arrived, those few months ago, they started to copy, like they just copy something, every cell, everything. And at first, they copied things that were around, like a broken handle of an axe, a can. But then they eventually found by people, and they copied the people. So a copy is made, the pod turns into the person, and the person just turns into gray mush, whatever was there before. So they take the human, copy it, and become the human, but not really. Because all they have are the memories of the feelings and everything, but they don't feel anything. That's how you can tell them apart. Which interesting, it's kind of like in Parasite too, a manga series. Because in there, as soon as the alien takes over the head, that's it. The person's gone. And because they're not human, they don't know how to train their face to show emotions. They're blank. So here they can, because they have the memories and pretend to, but there are moments where they drop the act, and you can tell this is not a real person anymore. And Manny says, "Oh, Miles, just give it up. It'll be okay. Just let the process take over you. It's painless. You will go to. They need to be asleep for the pods to take them, to copy them. While people are awake, they can resist it, basically. So Miles, he and Becky, they're trapped. What are they going to do? There's four of those aliens. They got nothing to do. So then Miles at least says, all right, if this is how it's going to happen. And then the professor starts, telling him the theory about all of this and how this is going to work. And and Miles realizes they're going to take over the whole world. That Santa Mira is just the beginning. So, Manny agrees. They're going to let them stay in the office. Two pods are placed outside. And Miles is trying to think of what to do. Maybe to buy them some time, do anything. And so his first plan, he has two skeletons in his office, actual ones, not plastic. Male skeleton and a female skeleton. And he places them on the floor, and he takes blood from both him and Becky, sprinkles a little, and even adds some hair. So the plan is they need to have Manny and the other three men move them to another place. Maybe like that they can at least get out of there. So, the transformation starts from the pods. But Becky says, no, Miles, we need another plan. We need to somehow fight them. And he tells her, Becky, this isn't a movie. I won't be able to take on four men. And she said, yes, but you're also, you say that, but you're forgetting this is really not a movie. And, what do you think? I'm just going to crawl to the wall and, stand there in horror shaking? Well, that's how they'll think, so why don't we use that? So he takes 4 syringes, fills them up with morphine, gives 2 to Becky, and she straps them under the sleeves of her dress, and he also straps them. And then he yells at Manny, because Manny goes in after it didn't work. And the reason that this helps them because they don't have more pods. All of the pods were given away at that rally. It was outside, and they need more. So they'll be taken to the police station until more pods are available. So they start taking them out. They go down the stairs, and so it begins. As they turn to go another flight, then Miles sticks two syringes in two of them. And the one man he doesn't know and the one he does know. And then they start fighting him. Becky's crouching in the corner, pretending to anyway. And then she also takes and she uses her syringes on Manny and the professor. And at first they're fighting Miles, but then they all collapse. Then he and Becky get out of the building, and he tells her, don't show too much emotion. Let's pretend to be like these aliens. So they go outside. When a policeman's waiting there, someone that Miles also knows, and he says, "Oh, you're here. Manny was supposed to call me when he was done." And this cop, even before, was a little stupid. Miles says so. He doesn't immediately check. He said, "Oh yeah, he's been trying to call you, but the operator is having trouble with that." They've also taken over the one of the phone operators. So when Miles tried, making calls to the FBI when he and Jack were calling, he couldn't because the operator was making sure he wouldn't be able to. So yeah, that was back then when you had to call the phone operators to get connected. But that's that. He and so they walk calmly at first, but then they reach like the hills there because Santa Mira is built on hills, and they start running. I also take benzos with them to benzos, right? Stay awake. Miles, they keep running. Then they decide, wait, let's hide because it's morning, so that's to their disadvantage. He takes a bunch of shrubbery and then covers them both, and so they lay there waiting until it's dark. Then they get up and start going. They're going to reach Highway 101, and from there maybe somehow escape. But as they're passing, they're getting to a farm, and then they see all the pods out there. And Manny realizes that they didn't need to continue any search parties because they already have them cornered. That's it. All they had to do was wait in the field, and they would have had them. But then in a last ditch effort, not to go down just like that, Miles and Becky sneak into the farm and remove. Take a tractor, something with gasoline. They open it, they pour out the gasoline, and they start to fire. Then the fire starts to spread, burning some of the pods, but that's it. Then it dies down, and then they are they meet the mob of aliens. They don't show any anger, but they start to they grab them and start walking them out of there. All of the people, everyone in the town are now pod aliens. The women, the men, the children, everyone. But then suddenly the pod people stop, and so does do Miles and Becky. And they look and they see up in the sky the pods are flying away. All of the alien pods just getting up and flying, leaving. That's it. And Miles realizes that they just decided that, this planet is too hostile. They're not welcome here, and even though there was no chance, the humans still kept fighting. So the pods decided, well, fuck it, let's just get out of here. And that's it. And then the townspeople the pod people just go away and go back to town. Miles and Becky, while they're locked in the office, he said, "Oh, Becky, why didn't I marry you? We should have been married." and that I guess kind of gives them more push to try and survive. So Miles and Becky go to Theodora and Jack's house where they were kept, so they would fall asleep and also turn into pod people. Theodora's sleeping. Jack was, waiting for them by the window, and that's it. Then they all sleep, finally getting some rest. And then after that, things start to improve in Santa Mira. The town still looks very shabby. There's not a lot of people. The dying rates are really high for some reason, but new people are moving in. New couples. A couple next to Miles and Becky. How Miles and Becky live together. I wonder if they ended up getting married. And not Jack, Miles said, in some years from now, in 5 years, the town's gonna look completely normal again. And, did it actually happen? What has actually happened? And that is it. That is the story of the Body Snatchers. Okay, now this is a really cool cover. You see, like, in stages of the pod people developing. Looks very wicked. There we go. I really like this one. What is that about this publisher? The quality of books isn't great because they start to, like, on the sides and everything, you start to get dinged, and I don't know, for some reason, a lot quicker than other books I've had. At first, I read it like that, but back then I wrapped it because it was just getting worse. But yeah, anyway. Well, now for the story, I definitely think the movies probably did something different. At least that movie, because again, that scene with the scream, nothing like this exists in the book. None of them like point at you and yell. It's just you can tell when they drop the act, trying to act like humans. It's a very interesting alien story. It's very engaging and also kind of shrouded in doubt too. Did that happen? What was it? What were these pod people? Or these pods? Were they just going to take over? Because Manny tells them that they're not going to live long. They have maybe 5 years of living, the pod people, and then they're going to die. So what would they have? I guess they would have just turned into things until they eventually died. Maybe animals next and plants, but eventually they would destroy the planet because they would copy everything until it was dead and then move on again. It's interesting that just this resistance that made them leave because they could have just overtaken them. What would have Jack, Theodora, Miles, or Becky could have done? There's four of them and a whole town full of these. It looks like they decided, I don't know, it wasn't worth it, or this race was fighting too hard for them. Because at the end of the day, they are pods until they turn into something. They're parasites. So it's not like they have defense mechanisms of their own. If more humans came, from outside of Santa Mira and fought them, they would have been doomed. They could have destroyed them. Yeah, and destroyed the pods. So maybe that's why they thought if they're gonna try to do that to us, we should maybe leave and look for a planet with less resisting population. That was that. But it was very interesting and also quite scary because it's not like you're alien with two heads and tentacles and shit. These aliens look and just copy people you knew your whole life, and what are you supposed to do? Unless they have that moment you can't notice because it looks exactly the same. Well, they're not exactly the same. For instance, they can't reproduce. Um, I guess it just means that yeah they have the necessary parts, but they probably I don't know don't create the like the men don't have semen and the women don't have eggs anymore. I didn't exactly understand how, but it was just very interesting. It all happens in this one small town. There's no, bombastic fighting with guns or things like that. It's kind of like War of the Worlds, just regular people falling into these situations, not like the more modern sci-fi with all the fighting and guns and shit, and calling the military. I mean, they try to call the military, but it's not like military comes with guns and there's shooting and things. It's much more like up to single individuals that don't know what they're going to do and how they're going to face it, and also who the fuck's gonna believe them. Because again, the people they said these are not those people. They are, but you can unless you look very carefully, pay attention very carefully, you can't tell. And actually, Becky and her cousin were very sensitive to this, so they could tell that something was wrong. Yeah, it was a very interesting read. I definitely enjoyed the story a lot. It took me so long to read. In the end, it was very engaging. I liked the character of Miles that told the story. And just interesting what happened later, because the four of them know these aren't actual people. So did they just avoid them? I guess Becky maybe didn't go home after that to her dad, did she? Because it's not her dad anymore. Interesting, isn't it? Well, they do have these parasites do have a need to keep existing, but they don't have actual emotions or desires, which is how not Jack, Miles realizes that this is the way to identify them. Really, that's the one thing you know that they're not humans. Oh yeah, that was the book. It was a really good read. I did like it a lot more than I did War of the Worlds, but this is different. This also happens in the 50s. So there are now guns and telephones and everything. But here it shows how aliens could still, even with the communication, could still do something to, make it not happen. But in this case, there were no giant robotic machines for them to use, just disguising as other people and then dying. Interesting. An interesting idea for alien parasites. Alright, folks, so that is it. Let me know what you thought of the Body Snatchers, the book, or if you watched the movie, or both movies. I should check it out. I wonder what they took from the story to make out of this. They probably Hollywoodized it somehow, I'm sure. Okay, so that is it. Remember, collect what you're passionate about and share it on YouTube. Bye!